What is up, humans of the cardboard? Welcome back to Just Nuts, guys. Today we are doing a very fun discussion video. We're talking about Tellarknights. This deck is very, very cool. I recently played against it. My guy Charles had picked it up. It's one of the, I believe that he said that it's his very first competitive deck he's ever played. He doesn't even normally play control decks with a lot of traps, but he was just missing it, and he loves that deck design-wise and everything, and I don't blame him. This is one of my favorite decks as well. I just haven't seen, it just hasn't been playable in so long. And so I love rogue decks, but I don't even think this deck is rogue at the moment. But I do think it's one of those decks that every year, every time I get to that point where I'm like trying to talk about, oh, what are the archetypes that make sense for Konami to support? I think this is one of them. It has history in the metagame. Doesn't mean they need to make it like tier 1 again, but just to be like, as a rogue deck, even like decent, would be really cool. So a lot of people have nostalgia competitively with this deck. It has a really cool lore behind it. The design is obviously very cool. It's a classic warrior deck, but has its own lore and stuff, so that draws people in. But I just think it makes sense. And so today I'm going to be talking about some of my theories on, like, if we were to get support, exactly what I want to see. I kind of did a video like this with Marine Cess, exactly what I think like Marine Cess support should look like fairly recently. So this is kind of going to be based on that, or like same style at least. So I think there's really only two like routes really we can go when we really go and look at everything. But before we get into that, let's quickly do a quick overview as far as the monsters go. You have the Neb, she's a Rhoda for the or Stratus for the archetype. Altair is like Wolf Bark for the archetype. The Neb is like Armageddon Knight for the archetype, and then Vega is like Goblinberg. So they have like a lot of the basic cards, like classic cards that are just good to have. And then you have the spells and traps, and this is where I really have my biggest problem with the deck, is the spells and traps aren't terrible, and these are really the only three even somewhat relevant ones. I don't even think Genesis is that good, but I would say it could be sideable or even like a cool one-of in the main deck to out certain things, should this deck be competitive. But mainly the two ones are Skybridge and Alpha. Skybridge allows you to like quick effect tag out like a Tellarknight into another one. Doesn't even negate the new one or anything, so that's really handy. Helps you dodge hand traps and stuff because it is a quick effect. And you have Alpha. This card is like a, I don't know, Omni negate any spell, trap, or monster effect that's activated. Send a Tellarknight monster to the graveyard, and then you draw a card, essentially. So, like, you negate something by sending a Tellarknight, and then you draw. Really cool, replaces that value, which is really solid, and also triggers stuff like Travare to allow them to float. So, very cool. The biggest problem with this archetype is these are completely unsearchable. Completely unsearchable in the archetype, and I think that needs to change. And so I think no matter what kind of support they do give, and in what form, whether it's monsters, spells, traps, extract monsters, I do not care. They need to make these cards searchable, particularly Skybridge and Alpha. And so keep in mind, because the names are kind of wonky, this is a Tellarknight card, this is a Stellar Nova card. So I think we need to see a card that like somehow searches a Tellar Speller Trap card. Tellar, in quotation marks, search one of those. And real quick, going over the extract, obviously I have Travare. This card's insane. It rips the card out of the hand. It bounces everything except himself when he's Exceed summoned, which is insane. And he floats very generically. This card is insane. Triple Bat Lamias, this card allows you to make him, because he normally requires 3 materials, you can make him now using Bat Lamias with any 2 Tellarknights and a discard in hand, which is really good. Deltros can also come up for very specific removal, and Constellar Diamond is also insane. This card just can negate dark monster effects per the number of materials it has, so that can easily be like 3 to 4 different negates for dark monster effects, which is insane. So yeah, as far as that stuff goes, I don't think we really need anything like boss monster wise, but I do think we just need to open up the ability to get to the spells and traps, and I'll show you exactly what I mean. My first theory, and actually Charles brought this up to me, so 100% shout out to him, because he said this and I said, you know what, that actually would work really good when I went and thought about how it would all play out. And that is a link 1 that adds on summon any Teller, spell, or trap card from deck to hand. And I know this seems insanely powerful, but I think if we were going to get one card of support for the archetype, I think I would want to see something similar to this. It could be in a slightly different form. I wouldn't really want to spell, because it means it'd be unsearchable, and it means you'd have to just hard open the spell to even get access to the other ones, which would help, but it wouldn't be amazing. I think a link 1 is the best way to go. And I'll show you why. So 1, obviously, is very easy to get to with the deck, but here's just a simple example. It turns something like Deneb, which normally would just be set up. It means you literally, normally if you just open Deneb, you just go normal Deneb, search Altair, pass with some traps. This will probably end up in grave. Next turn, you can normal Altair to specially back and then get your resource engine going. Well, that's way too slow for 2021, okay? So in this example, assuming this is just a Tellarknight link that says add any Teller speller trap on link summon, we're gonna go normal Deneb. Deneb adds you Altair usually just because that's your best follow-up, whatever. Then we can link Deneb for the link 1. The link 1 will then search us a speller trap. We'll say it's here, just so we can see it. We'll add Skybridge. We'll activate Skybridge targeting the link 1. The link 1, well, sorry, you summon first and then it gets shuffled. So then we summon another Altair out of the deck. And then we shuffle the link 1 back. And then Altair triggers reborning the Deneb that we had in grave. Boom, there's 2 monsters, which means now we can actually make Batlamias. And discard a card, which could be this or something else, but it does mean if all you had in hand was the Deneb, you could still do this. But just for example, we'll discard this just to show you that it is a 1-card combo. Discard this to then make Travare, and then we can use Travare's effect, detaching probably the Deneb to then randomly discard a card from the opponent's hand. So we used a 1-card combo to end on a Travare, but we also ripped a card out of our opponent's hand. So we kind of go +1 overall, but we also have Deneb and Altair set up in grave. If we didn't want to discard the Altair that we searched, we would have had the Altair in hand. And Travare floats. He's a very, very good float. He just generically floats when he's sent from field to graveyard while he has material, and that is very, very easy to trigger, including with like your own Stellar Nova Alpha by yourself. So very, very good. And like, and even any other Tellarknight, normally Altair is garbage to draw. Normally Vega is garbage to draw by itself. But this even does the same thing. It just means you would just have to use a different card. You don't have like a free +1 off of the Deneb to like make it so your discard's a little less costly. So I'm just mean it would just take 1 more card out of your hand, but it would still rip 1 from your opponent, set up the float, and you'd still have should be 3 other cards in hand to make it happen. And so that's why I think a link 1 is like the simplest option Konami could do to try and like make this deck like immediately better. But I understand if they're reluctant to just make another really crazy link 1 like that. I totally get it. But I do think if they go a different route, it needs to somewhat accomplish the same thing. And I've theorized this before as well, and I've mentioned this in a video a while ago on the channel, but I do think it's possible that they could make another main deck monster that's kind of like the Deneb, but instead of searching Tellarknight monsters, it searches a Teller Speller Trap. So same thing, just another monster, but it is a main deck monster, and that definitely changes things. But it does also help you. It does kind of help consistency-wise at least. And it makes like Alpha searchable. Because right now I'm even having the dilemma right now where I'm like, do I even play Stellar Nova Alpha? Because like, I don't know, it's not searchable. And at that point, like, is it better to even just play other stuff because it's unsearchable? Like, what's the benefit really? And it just leaves you in a weird spot. It honestly does. So here's the idea, is like if you had one that like on normal summon searches that, let's just assume this Deneb is that. So we normal summon that, it can search you then a Speller Trap, then you can get Skybridge, and you can Skybridge it away for an actual Deneb. This goes back into the deck, and then Deneb searches you a monster. So like it more consistently gets you into that setup, which is kind of cool, but I don't know. And then it's one of those that like once you get it in rotation, you can reborn it with like Altair every turn, and it's getting you a Stellar Nova Alpha search every turn, which is kind of cool. So I don't know. It's like okay. It's not my preferred version, but it is another like way to make that like a thing. Like I said before, I don't really want to see a spell that just says add a Teller. Maybe if it's add a Teller card, because then it gets you like a monster that you need, or it gets you a Speller Trap. That could be actually pretty nice. But overall, I think the link 1 is the easiest, simplest option. The other thing that I did consider, but like the problem is like I don't know how easy it is to get all this set up, is something like, and it's hard to think of off the top of my head, but it's something like the Mathmech trap card that like summons multiple Mathmechs and then immediately performs an Exceed summon, or I guess something like more like Tri-Brigade Revolt. So if you could put like multiple Tellarknights in grave and maybe have a card like that, something that would allow you to like link summon or exceed summon Trevere on the opponent's turn would be like absolutely insane, because then you just quick make Trevere and then he triggers to bounce the entire field. Obviously that can be insane, especially since he floats after that. That's definitely something to consider. But I think like if we were to get the Link 1 and something like that and it had Teller in the name, that might just be like too good. That just might be like too good to have. But to be fair, Trevere does take 3 materials, so you can't just make Trevere that way. With only 2 monsters engraved, you do need to get 3, so you probably wouldn't be able to set it up turn 1. So just some other things to keep in mind. I'm not trying to get like too crazy here, but I really do think that Link 1 would be so good. I don't think it's so good that it like completely breaks the deck. Because like obviously it loses to a lot of hand traps. Any Veiler, Impermanence, Ash, whatever stops this card from searching, and then it forces you to like have a card in hand. It forces you to have something like Skybridge already in hand or whatever, but it's still a name. So you would, if you just hard drew Alpha, it still works. This is just cool, by the way. I just like this card. I would probably try and play one of it in the main if the Teller spells and traps became searchable. I just think it's actually a pretty good card. But yeah, like I don't want to go too crazy in this video. I don't think the deck needs a ton because I think that engine is so solid. Once you get this going, like it really does work. The problem is just so slow. You're going to get blown out by most decks in the game right now. And I think something like a fast Link 1 like this would just like allow this deck to be able to do a little more, a little faster, and actually feel like it can attempt to compete in our modern day metagame, which would be really cool because I think Tellarknights, a lot of people like Tellarknights, and Konami's kind of neglected them for a while, to be honest. That's just where I'm at. I think they might be the #1 deck that I think like hasn't seen support in many years, and like is a very popular, like is probably the most popular deck or one of that just hasn't seen a support card in like years and years. And I think they're like front runners to just see any support here. We also have Battle of Chaos right around the corner, so keep that in mind because that's a set that should only have, or should mainly have, support for light and darks. This is an all light archetype, so this could easily end up seeing something in there. I'm just saying. But yeah, that's pretty much it for me today, guys. I would definitely want to leave you with the question of this. Let me know in the comment section if you could give this archetype any kind of support. What would you do and like how would you format it? I'm very curious to see what you guys think of. This is just what like Charles and me kind of thought of, and I wanted to talk about it because this is definitely an archetype I've been really excited for a long time, but it just, since I got back into the game, it hasn't been good enough to really try and play on a competitive level, but I would love for it to be able to. So let me know in the comment section your thought on that, and I'm going to get the heck out of here. But thank you so much for listening, talking with me today, discussing with me today. I will see you in the next video, and a little bit of peace.